In this video, we'll be taking you through a journey of the origins of spin.
As defined by Sandra Brown, spin usually refers to a highly specialised form of political communication to deliver a specific message, and media management goes along with it.
So if you're a future media student or would simply like to know more, keep watching.
Have you heard of public relations? Some scholars date its emergence to the 20th century, but in 2019, Dr Maartens from the University of Liverpool's Communication and Media Department suggested a much older lineage. He identifies that elements of public relations had begun to appear in Britain as early as the 18th century. A pivotal moment in the development of this new system of media management occurred in 1771, during the reign of King George III. Up until this point, reporting of parliamentary affairs had been strictly prohibited, as journalists couldn't even mention the MPs' names. After 1771, politicians began to turn a blind eye to reports of parliamentary affairs, and by 1774, at least 12 newspapers were reporting directly on parliamentary affairs.
However, it was often difficult for journalists to see and hear the debates in parliamentary chambers, which led to contradictory commentary on the debates between newspapers. The issue was resolved with MPs sending advanced copies of their speeches to press, and believe it or not, it's still happening today.
Additionally, journalists weren't allowed to take notes in the Commons until 1783 and not until the 1820s for the Lords, so before that they had to rely on their memory to remember all the debates.
Heard of lobbying? Well, the word is commonly used today to describe the pernicious influence of corporate actors. But in the 19th century it was used in Britain to describe journalists who quite literally hung about in the lobbies of Parliament waiting for exciting news.
In 1803, another pivotal moment occurred. The Prime Minister William Pitt declared war on France and prepared a speech which attracted much public attention. When the gallery doors were opened, the journalists found that all the seats were taken by MPs and Pitt's affiliates, so no reporters could fit in and record the speech.
Journalists complained to the Speaker of the House of Commons and mentioned the story in the press papers, labelling the incident as a public calamity. What was the result? Well, the Commons started to reserve the seats for journalists. This would go down as a huge step forward in political journalism. Mind you, it didn't come cheap, as journalists were paying £0.50 to secure their seats. As restrictions on reporting parliamentary affairs were lifted and the demand for political newspapers increased, politicians started to pay more attention to their speeches and the rhetoric. In 1830, the average time of the MP speeches in the Commons increased to 40 minutes from just 10 minutes in 1780. Did you know that journalists began to be treated better due to a freak accident? In 1834, a fire destroyed much of the Westminster Palace, leaving the Commons and the Lords in ruins and necessitating a complete rebuild of Parliament. However, this calamity was a blessing in disguise for reporters. Upon the completion of the new Parliament building in 1852, both the Lords and the Commons were equipped with dedicated reporters' galleries that were larger than their predecessors and better positioned within each chamber.
Compared with the two chambers, the Parliament lobby allowed for journalists to enter at will. However, in 1884, a lobby list was drawn up to control which journalists could enter the lobbies and the reporters' galleries. The London dailies and the provincial newspapers with the largest circulations were given preferential treatment so that Westminster could reach the largest readerships throughout the country.
We always think that Parliament and the press are independent and opposite entities, but in fact there is a symbiotic relationship between them. For example, in 1910, the Commons had 41 MPs authoring articles in the press, plus many journalists and newspaper proprietors worked in Parliament.
For this journey of the origins of spin, you've learned that in the 18th and 19th centuries, elements of public relations began to appear in the British political environment.
Parliament learnt how to promote policy, and politicians learnt how to utilise journalists to further their careers and interests. Meanwhile, journalists learnt how to source news and carry favours with the government. So the developments of the 18th and 19th century laid the ground for the modern system of media management in Britain today.
So next time you read a newspaper or glance at a web page, think about how the news was sourced, who was involved in creating it, and what interest it serves.